I was recruited in graduate school by Citicorp in order to join the international banking group, where I spent time in Doha, famous this weekend for the oil freeze, non-freeze meeting. Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. I got to the South when my boss came to Atlanta and recruited me from the Middle East back to Atlanta. I spent 14 years in Atlanta, ending with my founding of the Merchant Bank of Atlanta, which I served as chairman and CEO, and was sold to Nations Bank, now Bank of America. And that's how I got to St. Simon's. It was one of those wonderful things where they pay you to go away. I had a 3-year non-compete, and I had to do anything, I had to be 100 miles outside Atlanta, and that's how I got to St. Simon's, 1994. I served as an ambassador during the '96 Olympics, and anyone who faces traffic on Frederick Road now can appreciate watching the Olympics under Bill Campbell was enough of an education to say I'm gone. So in 1996, I left, joined bought another home, Black Banks.
I hope you prepared to defend your record. It says, why did you sign off on the Sea Island Road abandonment? Citizens were not properly notified about this.
Well, I think I didn't just sign off. The whole county, the commission rather, would have had to do it. But since I'm the District 2 person then, I'll tell you why. Because of the development. The hotel was expanding. They built condominiums, yes, on the beach, and the road wasn't abandoned. In the 20s, 30s, Sea Island dedicated the land on Sea Island to the county. After a terrible home invasion, Sea Island ownership wanted to put a gate up to privatize the island. And in order to do that, the county had to rededicate the land back to Sea Island Company. The combination of the home invasion, the gate, and finally the expansion of the Cloister Hotel all came down to Dunes Road was where the spa was, where the old spa was, but it basically had an encroachment of buildings. So we approved that with the agreement of the rest of the commissioners in order for Sea Island to go forward with the development. In terms of Sea Island Drive, the abandonment, that came with the building of the gate to Sea Island. When we dedicated the roads, we had a third-party engineer to the county say, by the way, you've got, 55 streets, most of which are on septic tank, and by the way, the pipes, like we had on East Beach when we put new sewer there, the pipes are corroded, the road's going, to hell. So what is the number for Sea Island Company to pay the county in order to privatize the roads? The number was $400,000. Jim Bruner, the county engineer at the time, said, Mark, and to the rest of the commissioners, we'd actually pay Sea Island to just take it. So, abandonment, there's always two sides to a story. There's always more detail than just saying, why'd you vote for abandonment of Sea Island? The gate, home invasion, and by the way, Sea Island Company built the dock, the fishing dock at Gascoigne at a cost of $250,000 to replace the bridge. Any debate like this, it comes down to what's the cost, what's the use, and will the users, think impact fees, pay for the use? When the old casino was torn down during my time on the commission, everyone was opposed. It was a great meeting hall, but much like the roads and the water sewer pipes and everything else, what we found out was the casino was falling down anyway. It had become a liability to the taxpayer. At that point, we spent money, spent money to redo the casino. I go to Island Planning Commission meetings. I know it's tight, and I think the last one we attended, there wasn't air conditioning. But here's what's the use? St. William's Church was fine until there was an overflow and then I think they moved somewhere. I wasn't there. But the churches, I think, have really a privilege to host meetings like this. And if you were to build something large enough to accommodate the overflow at the St. William's Church Forum, then you have to ask, but how many nights, days, usage would that building have at the cost? The other thing that's going to come up this year, and I fully, unequivocally support, is SPLOST. When I was on the commission, Fred Tullis and I, mainland district person, came up with tiering projects. You know, the criticism of SPLOST then was everything's just thrown against the wall like spaghetti. So we came up with a tiering system. Tier 1, all projects have to be finished before you can move to Tier 2. The money that comes in from SPLOST would fund that. And when you think about it, half of the sales tax revenue to the county comes from visitors. So, back to the meeting hall, should the island have something? Yes, we talked about a gymnasium on the north end of St. Simon's at one time, but there was not enough usage. What we got was a park near Frederica Township. Think usage, think cost, think SPLOST. Thank you. As I've said publicly, incorporation is the issue. I understand it. It was the issue back in the early 2000s when we faced it then. Rusty was a part of that. I think you were head of RUPA at the time. We worked together because you've got 7 votes on the commission. You've got to have at least 4 of those votes in order to move anything along. You also, at that time, had to have unanimous agreement of the local legislators. It's changed now, but here's what we have. We're running at large. We have the whole county as our constituency. What I will do is wait for the July Georgia Tech study on one thing, the impact to all of us as taxpayers. You know, when people ask me about incorporation, I say, look, in all the negotiations I've been in through my career, you don't annoy the person you're about to negotiate with. You go into any negotiation trying to find common ground. So for us to separate the islands, separate from the mainland, then to turn around and go back and negotiate public safety, water, sewer, the other things, what do you think the county's going to do? They're going to say, well, look, the impact of the separation, the incorporation, is this to the county. So we, the at-large guys, are going to have to figure out how to make good the loss to the county. And again, you don't annoy someone and then go in and ask them for a favor. Oh, please, county, don't charge us more than you were before to provide services to an incorporated St. Simon Sea Island. Now, the second issue is, should people be allowed to vote? Absolutely. If there's a referendum, if the impact study in July from Georgia Tech says it's a wash, that there would not be any increase to the taxpayer, then I'll confront it at that time, capability. So the county is really, and that's us, has the ability. Back in the early 2000s, we created something called Blueprint Brunswick. We funded it. It was a study. Brad Brown was the mayor, and then Brian Thompson. But we basically, as a county, gave money to the city to come up with a plan, which included the Gateway project. But you know what? It just never got beyond the city. The city and the county are still arguing over division of SPLOST. So, to answer the question, in order to get mainland development, you have to have the county, the economic development people, and someone like Cornell Harvey, the mayor, supporting what we all agree. The next thing I want to say is some of you know, maybe not all, when incorporation came up in the early 2000s, what I created as the only islands commissioner at the time, one district like Dale right now, was the Island Planning Commission. we had a 6-to-1 vote, meaning we had the support of the mainland, in order to create the Island Planning Commission, which was a compromise between the islands and the county, the at-large, and the districts, to give the islands their own planning commission. The other thing I did at the time publicly was say, all right, you can take the family in Macon, specifically, Bibb County family, who had one little bungalow on 7th or 8th Street, and they wanted to sell it to someone who was going to come in, and they did, and build a 3-story condominium. What I said was, at the time, well, look, you can do that because zoning prevails until you have, like Dale's doing right now, an ordinance revision and a tree canopy. You can't legally overturn zoning without a comprehensive plan and a revision. So what I did say publicly was, all right, when my friends from Atlanta come down and they want to buy that 3rd floor condominium, I can't stop them. But what I can say is good luck on the 4th of July flushing your toilet and getting a shower. A lot we can do about the traffic problem, but what is it? I didn't hear it. What I will do, though, is show of hands. How many would be in favor of another toll booth on the Tourist Causeway? About half and half. When Jekyll went to a $6 fee, they watched the traffic going onto Jekyll decrease by a significant percentage. That's a quote that came from someone who knows somewhere else. When the toll booth was removed here during my tenure, we found that there was $7.5 million in surplus funds in the state highway toll fund from St. Simon Sea Island. Now, toll booth went away. We asked for the money, but guess what? There were only 2 toll roads in Georgia, 400 and the Tourist Causeway. So the state took that $7.5 million and put it in the state treasury. Why? Because it was a state road and they could. Now think, I'm not there yet, but in terms of really, with Jekyll as an example, and with the idea of funding a specific, like they do private public toll roads throughout the country now, is, and with barriers, still there, thank Bob for that. But there's a way to come up with a toll booth, which may eliminate, buddy, I'm being a little discriminatory, but the Wayne County, Brantley County, Long County weekend tourists who come here because this beach is free and Jekyll isn't. And they leave often enough, as you talk to the public works people, they leave a lot of costs to us, the islands, to clean up. So what's the answer? Don't know yet, but one of the tangible things to be discussed, debated, and at the state level, analyzed, much like 400, which more than paid for itself over a 15-year bonding period with the surplus, that tollway's gone. So we would, in theory, have a sunset for the tollway. Once it's paid for, then it can go away. But in the meantime, with maybe the islands, like they have in Atlanta in certain areas, you can have a sticker like Jekyll, which gives you at least a reduced cost of going across the causeway each day. What it comes back to is, much like a SPLOST fund, a toll road with the funds staying here, not going to the state treasury, $7.5 million. Thank you.
Mark, what would you do with the money?
I'm sorry?
What would you do with the money collected?
Beautification of the islands. You know, there may not be any way to 4-lane Frederica. I mean, I was here last week for Dale's District 2 here, and there, you know, there's no way we're going to cut those trees. There's no way we're going to 4-lane Frederica. But there is another thing, and I'm sorry if I take time. I just found out that there are 2 large tracts of land on Lawrence Road, Musgrove which has a development site and a conservation easement, and then another one, Sinclair Plantation, just above, just east of Musgrove up Lawrence Road. And the land trust is trying to put money together to do two things: lower density and take some land out of development. Support of the land trust, Mr. Gibson, could be one thing. You know, if you go to Colorado and you're skiing and you leave the hotel, they say, would you have $1 added to your bill to go back to local government for beautification, blah, blah, blah. And you always say, sure. Well, $7.5 million 15 years ago could have gone a long way.
Could I ask a question of Mr. Bedner? Who owns the tourist causeway?
State.
The state. Is the state likely to give the causeway to us for that purpose, to allow us to put a toll booth on a state road?
Well, it depends. You'd have to lobby your legislators, you'd have to lobby the government, and here's the key, you probably would have to have a sharing, revenue sharing aspect.
I just wanted
but,
to
you know,
fill
it's
in on
better
that.
than nothing. Splost, I was 15 years ago when Tullis and I came up with the tiering, and you know, it's really easy to hold staff's feet to the fire. $7.5 million intersection improvements, you simply say detailing, like Chief Doran did. The criticism way back then was you're going all over the place and nothing gets finalized. We came up with Tier 1 projects that from staff and the city will be the ones that we'll put in Tier 1. You cannot move to Tier 2 projects until all of Tier 1's finished. And finally, you know, if $125 million, which was the wish list back then from SPLOST, if we got over $100 million, you would have moved to Tier 3, the projects. I think the price tag was $75 million. We would have been more than enough to do the Christmas tree list. It never happens, but I guarantee you this. We talked about traffic, we've talked about tourism, we've talked about toll booths. Why would you live in a community like this and not ask the visitors to help pay for some of the things we want to do? The renewal program, you know, down Ocean, up Bruce, or up Bruce, down Ocean, 2 lanes in, and I think, I don't know, there may be 16, 17, 18 streets. But what happened, we put the video in the pipes. We found pipes that went like this, pipes that were gone. So the $4.5 million budget turned into $14 million. Why? Because you start digging for the facts and you find stuff. Now to the point about, you know, Sea Island shouldn't have abandoned the roads. Talk to the people on the East Beach over the party house. Remember the party house? Yeah. You know, someone allowed that party house until the ordinance or the code took the party house away. But people have a right to have a safe and a private, to the extent allowed, neighborhood.